I can't put it more simply than this. We need to put our resources into updating the Apple II.
By taking resources from the Mac.
It's failing, that's a fact.
It's overpriced.
There's no evidence that it's...
I'm the evidence! I'm the world's leading expert in the Mac, John. What's your resume?
The movie is Steve Jobs.
Yes.
What did Steve Jobs mean to you?
Well, before I started, I guess pretty much what the majority of people really. I had some of his products, and I knew a bit about Apple, and I thought I knew about the launches, because I think that's probably the biggest image we have of him. It's certainly the black polo neck jumper and the jeans and the kind of walking in front. It's now, because he revolutionised that industry. Well, he invented it, I think. And now every CEO, they used to be safe behind their desks, CEOs of companies, but now every single one of them has to be able to walk up and down in casual clothes with a microphone on and try and sell their toothbrushes or their motor cars or whatever it is to us in a kind of intimate, personal way in front of a huge screen. And so I just knew that about him, I guess, really. And then this script arrived that was an attempt to... And they said, Scott Rudin, who sent it, said it's not a biopic. Don't think of it like that. And I think that's the most crucial thing about it, is that it doesn't try to hit those numbers that the regular biopic attempts to hit, the greatest hits, the most significant moments. Yeah. And it's kind of a skimming stone, whereas this is actually the opposite. It takes something that you think you know and literally stops just before we get there. So it's the 40 minutes before he walks out on stage at 3 different products. So you see literally behind the scenes and hopefully under the skin of the man in a way, or our version of the man.
And there's a line in the film where someone says to him, what is it exactly you do? What do you think he did?
Oh, he synthesized. He had a vision, which is not to be underestimated, but isn't a skill. It's often a curse in a way, it can be. He had a vision of what he thought these computers could become for us. And he synthesized people's technical talents towards that vision. So yeah, what you quote is that people say to him, in the film, people say to him, Seth Rogen, Steve Wozniak says to him, you don't have any engineering skills, any coding skills, any design skills. What do you actually do? And what he does is he pulls all those people who do have those talents and focuses them on a vision, which they can't see yet. They can see their bit of it, but he can see the whole thing. And that vision was... And it's why we begin with Arthur C. Clarke in a room of what were computers in the 70s, where they lined the walls and they were blinking lights, and they were very intimidating looking things. And he was literally saying, don't think of them like that. Think of them as your friend, whom you will trust with everything, which we do, and whom you will literally be so intimate with that you will take them to bed with you and they will sleep with you, which they do. I mean, a lot of people keep them switched on, monitoring what's happening to them during their sleep patterns. And he saw that, and he synthesized people's technical abilities to actually get at that and achieve it. I mean, he was a great marketeer, obviously, a great storyteller, a great myth maker in his own right as well. That's a particular skill he did have, which he mobilized in these presentations and also mobilized in our memory of him. And that's why it's interesting to actually, with such a significant figure, it's interesting to reapproach him with an unusual storytelling device.
Why do you think he inspired such devotion?
He's in tandem with something that we clearly needed, which is that as the world emerges, steps out of, globally, it steps out of a century of war, it becomes now about not warring nations, it becomes about the individual purchasing power. As capitalism begins to dominate the whole world, it becomes about individual purchasing power. And he harnessed that. He said that instinct you have of wanting to own something that is significant and important, I will give you. It's not just, this is power in your hand. And he calls it, imagine this kind of power in everybody's hands. And he saw that, and at the time, I mean, the closest we get to it is the iMac, which is quite chunky and still quite heavy. So there was still a long way to go to him arrive where it's lightweight, and quite soon it will be literally within you, I think. If the biotech keeps going, it'll literally be within you. He saw that people wanted that, and his argument is they don't even know they want it yet. I'm going to show them that they want it.
I was angry. You were saying things about the Apple II, and the way you were treating the team
was. You get a free pass for life. I gotta get back on stage. We got like 2 minutes of rehearsal time left.
Do you understand how condescending that just was?
What?
I mean, maybe you don't.
I don't want to see you get dragged off.
I get a free pass for life from you. You give out the pass. You give them to me.
You're gonna have a stroke, little buddy.
What did you do? What did you do? Why has Lisa not heard of me?
Man, how many fourth graders have heard of you?
You can't write code. You're not an engineer. You're not a designer. You can't put a hammer to a nail. I built the circuit board. The graphical interface was stolen from Xerox PARC. Jeff Raskin was the leader of the Mac team before you threw him off his own project. Everything, someone else designed the box. So how come 10 times in a day, I read Steve Jobs as a genius? What do you do?
I play the orchestra. And you're a good musician. You sit right there. You're the best in your row.
I came here to clear the air. Do you know why I came
Can
here?
you just answer that?
I came here because you're gonna get killed. Your computer's gonna fail.
And he talks about being a conductor, conducting an orchestra. Can you see parallels between what he does in that respect and what you do as a director?
Yes, it is weird doing the film because I also have no practical skills. Most film directors don't. I couldn't run the cameras. If they broke down now, I'd be the last person in this room you would ask about them. But you have a kind of vision of something that doesn't exist yet. You get a script, that's part of it, but you have a kind of idea of what it will look like, feel like, to experience. And you try and synthesize all those other people who do have the individual ability to fix the cameras or make the music or, paint the sets or whatever. And you try and make them all work towards that goal, really. And so there are those kind of similarities like that. Not that I'd want to encourage them, but it was weird working on it in that way, yeah.
The script is by the great Aaron Sorkin. What did it look like when it came to you? Were there stage directions in there, or was there nothing? And in which case, how do you harness that rhythm of his words, and how do you turn his words into images?
What he tries to do is he lets you bring in the cinematic part of the world, and he provides the dialogue. And the dialogue in this case is not just interesting stuff people are saying to each other. It's almost like the vehicle by which you express genius. Because the people in the film, especially Jobs, but Wozniak as well, these are geniuses in a way, in terms of what they achieved. So you go, how do you represent them in a movie? Do you show them writing mathematics or opening up machines or stuff like that? You don't. You use something, because actors and me, we don't have those skills really. They're fake. When you see them done, you don't really understand that algorithm you're writing out. It's just you've been told to write it out and it looks good. But what actors do understand is language. That's their tool, really. And so he uses that to suggest speed of thought and size of mind, really. And that's what you're chasing the whole time. And why 185 pages doesn't feel laborious. It feels like you're on a tunnel, just racing down a tunnel, trying to keep up with these people. And that's a wonderful way of illustrating what this pursuit of this vision was like, really. And the damage that's done on the way there, which it is done to some people, and the devotion it inspires in other people.
Music plays a massive role in your films. It's got a marvellous score. It's got 3 scores, effectively. You've got some Bob Dylan in there. You put my favourite Libertine song in, so thank you for that.
Great song.
How did you go about putting together the soundtrack and getting that score together?
I got this guy, Daniel Pemberton, and I said to him, I want you to write the music before we start. And I want it to be in 3 acts. We discussed these separate acts and how the sound would be different for each act. Because the middle act is very operatic, and he writes it as an opera because it's a very highly it's a high illusion act, which is very theatrical, and it's a revenge act. So you can imagine it almost as opera. So he wrote that, and then it's early computers for 1984, and he was wonderful using all the old programs, and which are very difficult to work with these days because we've been spoiled how sophisticated things are now. And then the third act was he was free to use just a modern score, and he wrote it all before we started. So as soon as we started editing, we started interweaving his music in it, and it's like scaffolding and ivy. They sort of build together, and they're indistinguishable then, and that was fantastic. Never ever done that before.
When I see Michael Fassbender, I don't think Steve Jobs. So why did you pick him for the role, and what did he bring to it?
Anybody who's seen his work, I think, Yeah, he's a fantastic actor.
I feel like any film can be improved with him in it.
Yeah, he's an amazing actor. He's so uncompromising in what he does, and Jobs had that element about him of being completely uncompromising. There's an intensity in Michael which is clearly perfect for Jobs. There's a Jobsian intensity that they talked about that he just... The people who came in and talked about him, I mean, we'd cast Michael by then, but people who came in and talked about him and knew him say, make sure you get the stare right. So Michael had many natural attributes as an actor which allowed that. He's also very charming, Michael. He has a kind of Cary Grant side to him, which not many people see. You saw it in the Tarantino film. But it's his uncompromising approach, I think, more than anything, meant that he was going to pursue the guy through these extraordinary changes. On the one hand, the people who are devoted to him deify him in a way, and the other people who are damaged by him, paint a very brutal picture of him. And how can an actor negotiate? Because we weren't going to ease these extremes. We weren't going to make him likable just because he was the subject of the film. Yeah. It was trying to negotiate all these people's testimony, and somehow Michael manages to do that. And we did it not through impersonation, through mannerisms or prosthetics to make him look like him. He gradually arrives at him, and by the time he gets in the third part of the film, certainly watching him as a crew, I think we all felt he was him. He kind of was the guy.
You're gonna get killed. And I came here to stand next to you while that happens, because that's what friends do. That's what men do. I don't need your pass. We go back, so don't talk to me like I'm other people. I'm the only one that knows that this guy here is someone you invented. I'm standing by you because that perfect cube, that does nothing, is about to be the single biggest failure in the history of personal computing.
Tell me something else I don't know.